A new think on that real quick, just called dad statements. It's like dad jokes. It's more of like, it's not necessarily punchline. It's more like shower thoughts. You're like, huh, that's interesting. You know, like when you brush your teeth, it's the only time you clean your skeleton. Because they go right into your jawbones, you know. Totally unimpressed. Can't even crack a smile.
I have a question for you. Well, Jessica has a question for you about.
Hit me with your best shot.
Well, it's based on history, and it was about the war.
Hey, Derek.
Derek, how you doing, bud?
Howdy. Which war? There's been a couple of them.
Oh, so no, it was about the timing sheet. Which was it? It was the women's suffrage. No.
I've started
The women's suffrage.
not updated
Okay.
the links on.
And
You probably know what that is,
no.
right?
Women's suffrage? Yeah, it's about women's fights for equal rights, like the right to vote and
Yeah.
be employed.
And then what was the one after that though?
Oh, man.
I gotta memorize all of these things. There's 16 life event things throughout history that I have to memorize the order of them.
Oh,
and some key details about them. Shoot.
I've known it for like 10 years, but I
Well,
haven't seen
she'll remember it and ask you.
It was the
Is a question regarding
civil rights movement.
Oh, okay, like in a
women's suffrage
civil?
started, but it was like a 72-year thing. So it started before the civil rights movement, but the civil rights movement was completed before the women's suffrage movement, right? But I don't remember.
Well, I mean, and that's,
Which comes first?
well, that's like almost, that's hard to say because you could say like women's suffrage, according to many, is still in movement because of things like pay gap and things like that, you know, things of that nature. And now, of course, then there's men's suffrage movement about like, well, we don't get, you know, off when the baby's born, what do they call that? Maternity leave. Fathers call it like a bonding leave or something, and they give a certain amount of time for fathers to have with the baby or something like that. I think James Shammerhorn or whatever told me about that with him. So
And some companies to do that now, but
point being is then depending on how you define its end, probably would be one of the key crux pieces of that
but it came after
civil rights movement.
the rights movement.
Yeah, because civil rights movement was like that long, and women's suffrage was like, you know, times 4. Then again, it also depends on when you define when the civil rights movement started. Like, what was that? What was the starting point for that? And everybody can, I mean, there's kind of an agreed to, but it's, okay, what do you want me to agree to so you get the answer you want to hear so I can get the grade I need to get out of here, you know, like that. So,
Another question. Testing your.
I know, everything was
yeah.
real weird.
When was the first airplane made and by whom?
Made? It wasn't the Wright brothers.
When was the first flight?
Flight.
I was going to say, and I guess it didn't, powered flight or non-powered flight?
Non-power flight, I mean.
It's like a glider.
Glider, basically.
Leonardo da Vinci's. Yeah, the Wright brothers were not the first. Leonardo da Vinci is the first flight contributed to. Powered flight was the Wright brothers, but that's actually even.
Well, that was more of this.
In my life, unless I go on Jeopardy or something. And it was saying that the reason that the Wright brothers got the idea to build the airplane was because their father had brought them home a little toy helicopter.
Yeah.
So then they wanted to start.
The toy idea. Functional. Referenced on somebody before him. I can't remember who. And his was like, it looked like an airplane wing, like a corkscrew, you know? And so I don't know if you remember that design, if you've ever seen the picture. Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Learning all sorts of useful information.
Right.
How long was their flight?
Yeah.
Short. It was like in the hundreds of feet. It was very short, like a few hundred feet, and then it was like 14 seconds. It was real short.
They were 850 feet high
It's actually
and
something like that.
lasted 59 seconds.
59, is that it? Something like that, yeah. I was gonna say it was real short.
That's what,
I do
the
remember
History
that.
Channel says.
Yeah, this was his first design for a working helicopter, and so it was kind of like basically like a corkscrew shape that would corkscrew into the air. And it actually can function. There's guys that have built these and made them fly. They're just highly unstable. They just drift off because there's no control, and then but they will go airborne.
And it's the reason then they started bringing out the
Putting a tail rotor on the back to kind of keep the stability there.
Pretty please. This
Kleenex.
room never has Kleenex.
Think of Boogie.
Oh, that's true. It's dripping.
Oh,
I got drippage.
I got an unused one in my pocket.
You, Brody. Do we not have any in here? Oh, we don't even have any napkins or anything, do we?
I was throwing stashes of extra tissues. So like, put it in my pocket right before I left that.
Oh, if you have some, I can always keep a pack of tissues in my sling bag. Yeah. Plus a set of restraints in case anybody gets crazy.
Hello.
Oh.
You all right?
Hey there. Uh-oh.
Sam was right behind you. He's like,
Sorry,
we
Sam.
made it awkward, Sam.
I don't think we have it.
That's okay, I have some here.
I know, actually, I know where some down. If you go downstairs and go down this hallway, like you're going through the children's thing, then on the left-hand side, right before the bathrooms, there's two doors. One's locked, one's not. If you open the one that's not, there's a little shelf.
I just realized I didn't do this week in Greek. I have to survive.
Oh, no.
Because the lawyer keeps pushing back the dates. They keep saying, oh, no, file, oh, file.
Hey there, kids.
Did she have them for a visit or something?
Hey, Mr. Atkins. Mr. Kennedy. Can't say that I'm used to seeing you without more facial hair. That's new.
This thing is, I suggested it's not satisfied by the judge yet. She kicked him out. The police put these on Clark County. We all.
Are you acting as Michelle? I am. Does it appear she is busy? Righteous fools.
Somebody say righteous fools? Yeah, they are.
I'm gonna be here. I might as well act like it.
Might as well step up. Somebody needs to do it. If anybody's going to do it, Anthony's on the job.
Back in time, she took off, and I was just like,
How you doing? Yeah? That's what happens when you have children and wife and all that. And I guess life makes you tired, I've been told.
So, has he filed the paperwork yet? His attorney has not filed the paperwork?
He has not sent it in to get it working.
I found it.
yeah.
Tissues.
He has not sent it in to get it
I
working.
didn't want to risk taking it back to TSA, so.
Well, he
Your
has.
mom said it was the one that wasn't locked. They opened that, and that's general
Like the worst
supplies.
thing to try to take.
That's vacuums.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I think it's more on like borderline.
So I'm like,
Very upset
nope,
about
no
it.
tissues.
So it's like,
It's not stated by the judge. She has already.
I would like to get that full keychain. It went through on the first way, like through Portland. Yeah, I didn't get home. Yeah. Like I didn't want to have to deal with anything.
For Kyle and Ashley, because their dad filed the paperwork. He got temporary, custody at
Do what you gotta do.
So, and only because he filed the paperwork. So,
This new lawyer is what's really good about stuff. I'm like, no,
Yeah, they went through, but they definitely caught their eye.
you're gonna lose it. It's gonna be long with you know? So, it's just,
Did you guys know that we have
they have legal aid that
apparently a battle with another school? NLCS is battling another school. Did you guys know that?
I saw that.
Yeah, Minter Bridge. So we're like locked in battle with Minter Bridge.
Or were they striking you, or?
Yeah. Well, you can view this paper. Yeah, for fundraiser, Mod Pizza. So they have one day to do the fundraiser, we have the other, and then whoever wins gets like an additional 10%, I think. So instead of 20%, you get 30% for the school.
Where's the school?
Minter Bridge? I don't know.
I was gonna say, you're like, show up with 7L on the south bar. So they're all
I know, I was like, love of Jesus coming out here in class, folks.
Pull one out of that Rush group snag or whatever.
What the hell, Anthony?
Go out there with some picketing signs or something, scare people off.
East a little bit. Columbia, that
It's really important.
route that gave 7L to the local.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I heard, I don't know anything about that, but there was something. Is that what it was? I remember there was something about that. I couldn't remember what their purpose was, but yeah, they tried to like poison the city. Yeah, absolutely. Peace by force.
Yeah, it was the technique of peace by dictatorship, to where as long as everyone agrees with what we're saying, we're at peace.
Yeah, we'll be at peace. Otherwise, it could be bad for you. You're like, wow, this is great.
Peaceful place, as long as we're within bounds borders.
Okay, so announcements. Not to steal it from her, but she seems occupied. Yeah, so Mod Pizza for April 16th is for Minter Bridge, so don't go that day. April 19th is for NLCS. So NLCS is when we're going to do that on the 19th. Winner gets additional 10% back in total sales, so 30% total instead of just the 20 all day long. Yeah. You don't need the flyer, just let them know who you're with. Take the flyer in case you want to or something like that. But yeah, that's the deal. You want that day. So we'll be there.
Yeah. So, a new announcement on April 19th, we're having a pizza eating contest.
Yeah. Just the three of us.
Men's group.
Yeah.
Ultimate men's
UMG? Yeah, just to shove it in.
Show up before and everything.
Love it.
I will make it happen.
I'm not gonna be here, so.
We need to have one of those with its Jersey Mike's in it.
Yeah. Dude, yesterday I got like the number 15 meatball and the regular, and it's kind of longish, but they cut it in half. And man, I powered that thing down. I don't know if it shrunk or I was just like ready to chow. Man, I powered that thing down like it said something bad about my wife. I'll tell you, man, I could have gone for the full size. What do they call the giant? I think it is a giant, right? That's like an unreasonable amount of food. Like that's just too much. Grace course, you want to keep growing as a Christian, be more fruitful. Everybody should say yes to that. April 4th, there's class Sundays and Thursdays, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. if you're interested in that. Don't forget the New Life Christian School Easter program's coming up Tuesday the 16th at 6:30 p.m. If you're on the school board, Anthony, that's you and me, 6 o'clock. We gotta be there a little bit early to set up if you're available. Or you're working. Yeah, I know you're. Yeah, don't worry. If you make it, you make it. If not, I'll be there. NLC Mod Pizza fundraiser April 19th. Chow down. Easter Sunday's coming up April 21 for everybody that doesn't remember. April 21. Yeah. Kids groups and life groups at regular times. Invite a friend to join as we celebrate the resurrection. Family Promise, April 28th through May 5th. We will be stepping into that shortly as well. I'll be coordinating with Carl on that. And then baby dedications. If you have any babies you want to dedicate, you just randomly pick one out at the grocery store or something. You dedicate your child.
Is it this Friday? We're doing the Family Promise?
No, I don't think so. Because it's like in,
Following Friday.
yeah, it's like,
Friday in May.
yeah, it's first Friday in May.
I was
So,
about to say, they're about to be a lot of pizza.
yeah. And that's the major announcements. So you guys know I like to do dad jokes just to kind of like, break the ice and get started out. But we're going to do a little different today. Dad statements. Dad statements. And I even have graphics. What do you think about that? Was that somebody say I had one? No, you're fine. Oh, yeah, it says, the saying out of sight, out of mind does not apply when you're in a room and catch a glimpse of a spider and then lose it. Oh, out of sight, out of mind. No, I know where that spider is. It's funny, dogs hear us talking all day long, but if they bark for more than like a minute, we're like, hey, would you shut up? We're talking all day, and they're like, I said one thing. Be quiet. Let's see. If the earth is flat, maybe dinosaurs live on the other side, and we're digging up their dead and buried. That'd be weird. That's a flat earth theory you can share with your friends. You ever think that cats purposely break stuff off shelves? just so we'll order replacements and then they'll have a box to play in. They're evil, evil cats. And you never realize how many keyboard shortcuts your keyboard has until you box cross it. 600 things pop up. It must take a while for a giraffe to throw up. Like, it's just, it doesn't happen right like that. You need some time. Yeah, a couple seconds, you know, it's not immediate. This one's really cool. I like this. Everything above the water must be like space to a fish, like outer space. And they probably have, the dolphins probably have some theories, right? Because they kind of go into space for a minute, come back down. Fish are like, what's it like up there? It's cold. I don't know. Okay. I think that's all of them. Oh, yeah. People who say money can't buy friendship aren't considering that you can buy a dog. Awesome. Dogs. They're better? Well, in an effort to spite you, I brought dad jokes as well. It's a double-double. Sometimes I tuck my knees into my chest. It's just how I roll. No? You don't like that? What's green and has wheels? Grass. Well, I lied about the wheels, but it's green. No? No, you like that? Okay, so I always do the bad ones first. Now here come the good ones. What do you call someone who immigrates to Sweden? What do you call somebody who immigrates to Sweden? An artificial sweetener.
I thought they were supposed to get better.
They are getting better.
That's not bad.
Better, see? Better. Because I get the second one, I make that one the worst. The first one is just to be like, oh, it's the groaner. The second one's bad. The third one's better. And the fourth one's a top out. So, fourth one, this one I told Kyle. So actually I have a bonus today. I have 5. This one I told Kyle, so you may have already heard it. How does a snowman pick his nose? He just grabs the nearest bag of carrots. You had to do the visual to get it, right? All right, and then the bonus, number 5 bonus for the day. What do you call a dog with no legs?
You don't come anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you call him. He ain't coming anyway. Stay. Stay. Good boy. Huh? No? That's all good. Did you like the one? What did I say about where do you find a cow with no legs? Same place you left him. He ain't going anywhere. It's like he could roll. No? All right. Well, try to light heart the morning. Okay, so Mark 8 and guide and the teacher guide actually has us skip 8 directly and just go straight on to 9. But if you know anything about me, I'll give you one guess as to what we're going to do. We're going to do 8 and 9. So that means
I have a question for you.
we have to get slamming. Yes, hit me with your best shot.
What happens if worms take over the world?
What happens if worms take over the world?
Global warming.
Global warming? Yeah. By the way, I'm fully in expectation that all these dad jokes are finding their way to and through you into the people that you are in life with. You know, those little kids and all that you are teaching and all that. I assume they're little kids. They could be adults. I don't even know. I never asked. So Mark 8 and 9. We're going to start in 8. We're going to go all the way through 9 because there's just too much to miss to just jump into 9. So that's how we're going to do it. And you don't get a choice because I'm in the driver's seat. You guys are like, Jesus, take the wheel. Take it from his hand. Okay, so chapter 8, verse 1. Somebody would start reading and let me know your translation. I will change it up on the board. And we will start with that. Yeah, 8. And in typical fashion, I'm going to interrupt about every 42 seconds to give you a chance to speak, but not very long.
I have transitioned to NLT.
What you got? You know?
Just because it's easier to read right now.
Yeah, that's fine. And you're going to start us off?
Sure.
1 through 5, please.
So Jesus feeds the 4,000. About this time, another large crowd had gathered, and the people ran out of food again. Jesus called his disciples and told them, I feel sorry for these people. They have been here with me more than 3 days, and they have nothing left to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will faint along the way, for some of them have come a long distance. His disciples replied, feed bread do you have?
There for a minute. Water, if you don't have water nearby, if they have water nearby. That's a lot of food you got to bring. Pragmatically, that's a lot to carry with you, right? So they're only going to have after travel to go find it. The question I have is this: why is it that bread shows up so commonly in the Bible, and what is its symbolism to that end? I mean, it shows up all the time, right? We were just talked about 2 chapters ago, Jesus fed the 5,000, separate occasion. Scholars suggest between 6 to 8 months, maybe even a year previous. Fed the 5,000, and the first component of it was bread, right? What was the other component? Remember? Fishes. But there was bread. This one, first component again. What is it?
Bread.
Bread. He's asking about the bread. What does the bread symbolize? Why is he constantly referring to bread? It shows up all the time. Why bread of all things? I mean, granted, bread's kind of
Jesus told all the people to So Jesus also blessed these and told the disciples to distribute them. They ate as much as they wanted. Afterward, the disciples there were about 4,000 men in the crowd that day, and Jesus sent them home after they had eaten. Immediately he got into a boat.
interesting. Right? It wasn't yesterday. In our Bible, it's only 2 chapters, but still.
Like a
Baskets of
devotion or
bread.
something to daily bread.
Based on the Lord's Prayer, yeah. That's really what he's asking. How much faith do you have? Because all the time, whenever Jesus is doing miracles, what is always the base component? Faith. Your faith has healed you. Your faith has made you well. Love that faith component. So we talked about that. Bear in the back of your mind. We're going to talk a lot about bread today. Sorry for anybody who's gluten sensitive. You have to deal with it. It's kind of funny, though. You look at this. He says he took the 7 loaves, thank God for them, broken to pieces, gave them to disciples who distributed the bread to the crowd. So he gets the bread, he blesses the bread, and they distribute it. That's like the process. Then secondarily, it's like they're all of a sudden they're like, oh, and a few small fish were found. Like, oh, by the way, we had these the whole time. Here's some fish, Jesus. Do you want to do some cool stuff with that? It's like they had to trust him with the bread first before they were willing to be like, oh, it's that thing again. He's going to do the thing. Let's give him this fish too. It's like they didn't really have a lot of bread initially, faith, with the bread. But then once Jesus starts doing the thing, they start to fall back and remember, oh yeah, that's right. And suddenly their bread grew, right?
Before, the little boy had brought the fish and the bread.
In one basket right then. Bam, here you go. Now they're kind of holding out on him a little bit. And all of a sudden, we just found these fish. Yeah, right? Nobody knew about that. No, they were in my refrigerator. You couldn't smell them. Yeah, I smell a fish. Something smells fishy about these fish. So they kind of, I mean, you ever have that issue, you know? Like your faith just kind of hits a brick wall a little bit. And you're like, you know, maybe you could trust him with the bread, and then, oh, if I can trust him with the bread, maybe I can trust him with the fish. You know? It's just interesting, the little nuances like that you see. And afterward, they picked up 7 large baskets of leftover food. How many loaves of bread do they have again? 7. No mistake that the miracle occurred here. Like Jesus is like pushing the point, like proving the point. Oh, you had 7 loaves? How much do we have now? 7 baskets. Like there's a beautiful symmetry in that to
So
me.
what is the significance of 7? I know that we've talked about this before, but, because we don't talk about it often enough, but escape from it.
Well, for me, I mean, I'm real careful about that. This number 7 to me is nothing. It means nothing. It shows up in Scripture a number of times, but you be careful you get into numerology, stuff like that. I've seen people go down that road. Oh, well, it's 40 days and 40 nights of this and 40 days of tempting for Jesus, and then there's 7 here and 7 that. If you add 40 and 7, you get this number. That number divides into 365, which is how many? Stop. You're missing the point. There is significance in how God works, and sometimes we can use what he uses numerically to kind of understand what happens. If you're starting to see things in your life mirror Scripture, maybe there's something to that and you should pay attention to it. But be careful to jump into the numerology thing. That's where, like, a lot of the Revelation study, a lot of the study of when Jesus is coming back, you know, I think it was what, in 1984? 84, come back in 84. Well, that was a while ago. So, I don't know. Significance to it? Absolutely. They don't put a I've run into people who I've had like, oh, no, you got to understand. They're like shaking me about the numbers. And I'm like, I don't care about the numbers. I care about my relationship with Jesus as Savior. So there is significance in it, absolutely. I mean, and particularly in this one, you know, what is the significance? I think it's just he's proving that we had 7 loaves, now we have 7 baskets. Can you get that through your thick skull that this was a miracle? Okay, how about the fish? How many fish do we have? We had 2, you know what I mean? And so Jesus is kind of like trying to walk the disciples through it. And what does he say all the time? You unbelieving generation, how long will I be with you? I mean, he's kind of, you know, I mean, when you're in the ancient Near East and your day by day is just don't die, just try to survive to the next day, you're not thinking about heady theological questions. Is the suffering of mankind both useful and necessary? You know, like, no, it's, can we not die today? That would be cool. Is the water clean, or did one of the camels fall in it? You know, I mean, these are the legitimate things. Heady theological conversations aren't going to be part of your day by day. It's not happening. So, you know, he's really got to, I think a lot of times he puts these subtle little things in here for us to pick up on. It's the purpose of driving the point home. And it's more subtle for them maybe than for us, perhaps. Again, the stories are for us, but the experiences were for them. Just like the blind man, or the mute man last week, who was deaf as well. The experience was for him. The story is for us. I wasn't there to experience that. I don't get that experience, but I get the story, I get the learning. This experience was for them, but the learning is also for us. I wasn't there to experience that. The experience is for them. Okay, let's keep going. Verse 11.
When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had arrived, they came and started to argue with him, testing him. From him grew his authority. When he heard this, he sighed deeply in his spirit and said, "Why do these people keep demanding a miraculous sign? I tell you the truth, I will not give this generation any such sign." So he got back into the boat and left it, and he crossed the other side of the lake.
I love that. Jesus is doing miracles, and they're basically being like, yeah, that was cool, but can you do something really cool? Yeah, I mean, they're testing him. That's going to go over well for you. You know, like, it's kind of like my kids, you know, when they're really young like that, and they want to, like, test me, like, well, what are you going to do about it? Oh, really? You want to see what I'm going to do about it? Let me show you what I'm going to do about it. We're about to learn a lesson, and I'm going to guarantee you get it. Yeah. Like, testing Jesus, this is a smart move for you guys. He's doing miracles. This is my biggest people in general. People who complain but will do nothing. That complain but bring no action plan or not even a thought. Some things I get are out of your power. You can complain about them, but have an action plan around what you could do if you were in power, right? Or in authority. Or when people collectively start coming together and now there's energy and motive behind this, have a plan. Don't just complain. And it's kind of like, if you're going to complain about politics, you better be voting. Yeah. Sorry, I got a That was a little personal right there. Saw some of that come out. A little spicy. Yeah, so I love it when he says he sighed deeply in his spirit. Could you imagine Jesus sighing deeply in his spirit? Remember, he does everything very well. I bet he sighs really, really well. Like, you know, like, I mean, you just imagine Jesus sighing? That'd be awesome. I'm just glad he wouldn't be sighing at me, or hopefully not. Yeah.
Like an irritated teenager.
Yeah. But I just imagine like Jesus sighs and like in the distance a mountain kind of rumbles and people are like, whoa, he's not happy with us. Yeah, so yeah, basically they're saying, hey, yeah, you've done all these miracles, you've healed all these people, show us something real, show us something big. Go ahead, tough guy. You know, totally the wrong attitude, totally the wrong idea, and he's going to shut him down shortly. Now we get this really weird story about yeast. So let's read about it because why not? Here we are. Yeah, go ahead, 14. Go ahead and take it. I'll have somebody else jump in a minute.
Sure. But the disciples had forgotten to bring any. As they were crossing the lake, Jesus warned them, watch out, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod.
Go back and read it the way it's written. Exclamation point.
Watch out.
Yeah.
Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod.
It's like he's getting their attention. Like if you're in a boat that's under sail power, like not a motorboat, like where you're doing like, 50, 60 knots or something, and Jesus goes, watch out! You'd be like, what, is there a dolphin or something we ran into? This is a sea. There's no dolphins here. And I don't know why I said dolphin. Anyway. So he said, watch out, the bread of the yeast, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and Herod. Okay, so context. Yeast is used to make dough rise so that it gets fluffy and you have bread instead of like a loaf of bread that we would have instead of like flat bread, right? So that's what yeast does. Now, in the ancient world, yeast was something that you would kind of cheat the system a little bit, or maybe they're just to say they were really thrifty and very intelligent. So they would take a lump of dough, right? You're making some bread or whatever like that, and it would be leavened, right? It had yeast in it. You'd take a little piece of that out, like maybe the size of a golf ball, and you set it aside for tomorrow's bread. And then this bread would rise, and you bake it, and then you had bread, and that's how you do it. And then tomorrow, you'd use that dough that had yeast in it, and you would use that to then leaven that next lump, and it keeps going and going and going because yeast self-reproduce. And so you continue to do that, and then you can keep your leaven every day. You don't have to go to like buy yeast every day, right? So it's kind of smart, right? The Pharisees and of Herod. So yeast is also used in this way to talk about sin, and specifically like original sin, like the depravity of mankind. If you're a Calvinist, which I'm not per se, but I get that there's value to a degree in some of that. 3-point, 5-point, whatever you like. But he's talking about the yeast of the Pharisees. So the original sin, the inherent bend of mankind. Beware the yeast of the Pharisees, and keep going. What does he say about that? 16, please, yeah.
At this, they began to argue with each other because they hadn't brought any bread. Well, wait a minute. They had only one loaf of bread with them in the boat.
Yeah.
They haven't brought any bread, so what is it?
Well, they haven't brought enough for everybody is kind of what he's getting at.
It's 7 baskets, man.
Yeah.
Exactly, right?
You know, there's a bunch of us here. We only got one loaf. They didn't bring. So it's not that why are you arguing about having no bread? But again, he says, don't you know or even understand it yet? You really think he's talking about bread? Keep going. Let's find out.
Jesus knew that they were saying, so he said, why are you arguing about having no bread? Don't you know or understand even yet? Are your hearts too hard to take it in?
See, he's not talking about bread anymore, is he? Right? He's like, you guys not get it? You've been with me. It's getting close to the end. Anyway, keep going now.
You have eyes, can't you see? You have ears, can't you hear? Don't you remember anything at all? When I fed the 5,000 with 5 loaves of bread, how many baskets of leftovers did you pick up afterward? 12, they said.
Interesting that it's 5 loaves of bread, but there was 12 baskets. My thinking on that is there's 12 baskets because there's 12 disciples, and he wants every single one of them to remember that they picked up one of the baskets. Remember that? How many do we have? 12? How many are there of you? 12? Each picked up one, right? Does it sink in? Sink in? He's not saying it that way, but I am. All right.
And when I fed the 4,000 with 7 loaves, how many large baskets of leftovers did you pick up? 7, they said. Don't you understand yet? He asked them.
So he's talking about, aren't you getting it? It's not about the literal bread that sustains you daily in terms of your food intake. It's about the bread that's inside here. Aren't you getting it yet? That's the valuable bread you need to be eating every day. It's kind of an interesting story, and you can sidebar on it really easily. There's a whole study in and around this it's good to go through, but it basically boils down to they had no bread in their heart. They had no faith in their heart. They're too hard-headed. You have eyes, can't you see? You have ears, can't you hear? How many loaves of bread did we have? What did we end up with? Remember the 5,000? Wasn't that long ago. Careful, any yeast gets left over in your heart. That original sin, right? That then leavens your heart.
That's an interesting analogy with the sin, how sin, a little bit of sin grows.
Oh man, it goes every which way. The tiniest little thought becomes this, becomes that, becomes the next sin, becomes justification and all the rest. So I love the idea of bread. Bread's cool. You ever make bread? You ever actually make it yourself or like pizza dough or something? It's kind of a cool thing.
Bread maker.
Yeah. Well, you're cheating. It's okay. Hand doing bread by hand, making bread by hand. Michelle and I made some bread a couple years back and got into bread making for a little while. It's kind of satisfying and kind of really cool. I love the way that it works. It's just something magical about the way the yeast rises. You're like, amazing, Lord. But there's an analogy. There's an analogy here with regard to, so what did he say about himself regarding bread? He was what? He was a bread of life. So Jesus is the bread of life. And leaven equals what again? What was it? It is yeast. That's another name for it. But yes, it refers to like kind of original sin, right? The native inherent selfishness that we have that creates most of our sin. As Pastor says, most of our sin is rooted in our own selfishness. We could get rid of, probably get rid of almost all of the sin of our life. Yes, 100%. No, the yeast is. You gotta eat flatbread. That's why all the Middle Eastern people are so healthy. I don't know. I made that up.
Well,
Now then, okay, hold.
Leaven equates to yeast, not
Yeah.
bread.
Right. So then sin, Jesus took sin on the cross, which is leaven. And then like bread, he rose. Jesus is the bread. Bread needs leaven to rise. The leaven equals sin. Sin was on the cross that Jesus was on, which is leaven. Hit the bread, rose again. I don't know. I thought that was kind of, am I working too hard for that? Did everybody get it, right? Jesus rose. I think, because the yeast, like, wow, that's cool. I don't know. Maybe I'm simple-minded. Yeah, John 6:35 is where it talks about him being the bread of life. So if you're curious, you can read up on that on your own. Yeah, okay, cool. Now, Jesus heals a blind man. Remember what he did last week when he healed the guy that was mute and couldn't speak and was deaf and mute? What did he do?
Put his finger, put spit on his fingers, put it in his ears, and then touched his tongue and touched.
Almost, yeah. He just put his hands on his ears so that the man who was deaf would know. Because he can't pray over him. He's not going to hear him, right? Yeah. So he puts a hand on the ears because the man's deaf and mute. He can't hear Jesus pray over him. So Jesus connects with him in that moment, right? Like I said, the story is for us. He put his hands on his ears to let him know, I know what your issue is. He touches his tongue to say, I know what your issue is. He's identifying with that man to make it clear that when you're healed, you'll know who did it. There's no question here. It's not just like I snap my fingers, you're healed, and then he runs off and is like, I don't know, that guy was there. Maybe he healed you. Maybe it was just magical. I don't know, something unplugged and now I can talk and hear. No, he's connected with him intentionally. And initially we're like, ooh, he touched his finger to his tongue. When I was a kid, my mom would lick her hand and rub it on my face to clear off of whatever. And you're all like, oh, he touched his tongue to the guy's mouth. I'm like, and like, I mean, you can spit on me if that's giving me the blessing of Jesus. I don't care. Friggin' whatever, man. People are all like, oh, I can't believe Jesus did that. I'm like, really? Well, pay attention. He does a lot of stuff. Okay, so now we're going to see Jesus heal a blind man, and there's a similar thing that's going to happen, and people are like, ew, that's gross. And then I'm going to tell you all that you need to be quiet and listen because Jesus is doing something that's really cool here, and we're initially going to go gross. You know how I know that? Because that's what I did. Judgment. Okay, somebody else jump in on 22, pretty please. And away we go. I'm getting a little wound up this morning. I had too much coffee, I think.
I'll do any of the speed.
Yeah, the new American Spicy version. Bear with me as I find it. Diddly diddly do. Am I missing it here? There it is. Bang. What did I say? Verse 22? Boy, at this rate, we may not make it through 9, but that's okay. We're going to have fun along the way.
Cruise ship.
Yeah, right? Zing. All right, go ahead on 22.
And they came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to Jesus and implored him to touch him. Taking the blind man by the hand, he brought him out of the village, and after spitting on his eyes and and laying his hands on him, he asked him, "Do you see anything?" And he looked up and said, "I see them, for I see them like trees walking around." Then again he laid his hands on his eyes, and he looked intently and was restored, and began to see everything clearly. And he sent him to his home, saying, "Do not even enter the village." Jesus went out.
Hold on for a second there to 26. Okay. Hold on. Hold up. Jesus took the blind man and did what?
Spit in his eyes.
Other translations say used his spit and rubbed his eyes.
That's why I think he gave the other guy, the deaf guy, wet willy.
Nope. Didn't happen that way. You can read it. Why does he spit on a blind man's eyes and then basically rubs it in?
Because he can't see where it came from.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. He's blind. He doesn't know what it was. Is that rain? Why would you do that? I read 3 commentaries and 2 scholars on this before I finally put it together, and it was actually a article on WebMD that made it clear for me. This is not right. This guy lived. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what the answer is because it took me a little bit. There is a medical condition very common in blind people who have their eyes closed most of the time. Because when you're blind, it's very easy just to get used to the idea of your eyes being closed. It actually takes that much effort to keep your eyes closed all the time. Hold on. Yeah. Some blind people keep their eyes open all the time, right? And they'll blink like you and I will, but they can't see anything. Sometimes it's because their blindness allows some light to come in, but no shape, no like resolution or anything like that. And so they keep their eyes open because if they see a shape go by, they can at least do that. Or they see a shadow go by. Other people who are dead blind, like straight up black, a lot of times you'll see their eyes will be closed all the time, and they'll walk around like that. You know, and they just do that because it's easier. Just you don't have to worry or think about blinking. Well, when that happens, you ever wake up in the morning, your eyes be a little crusty? Sometimes you're like, together. That's what's happening here. The eyes have been closed for years. It's the Middle East. Not exactly a banyan of hygiene and clean water everywhere. Right? It's not like it's in the Northwest. Pick your eyes up like that and let your face get washed. You're blind. You probably didn't even know where to go to get the well. Jesus spits on his eyes to get all that stuff off of his eyes. It's pragmatic and simple. That's not the miraculous healing. That's just what he needed to open his eyes up. Now we have the only time in the Bible where Jesus progressively heals somebody. It's a 2-step. Spit on the man's eyes. He laid his hands on him and asked, "Can you see anything now?" And the man looked around and said, "Yes." He said, "I see people, but I can't see them very clearly. They look like trees walking around." So just kind of figures. And then Jesus placed his hand on the man's eyes again, and his eyes were open and immediately restored. You see everything clearly. Why the progression? Was it for the man? Was it for the people around him? Because remember, he said he took him out of town. Disciples are with him. Took him out of town. And he heals the man progressively. 1 step, 2 step. Other translations break this into 3 separate things. Hands on his eyes. Sees, hands on his eyes again. So 3 separate instances. NLT makes it a little bit more... Why would he do that? Why a progressive healing like that? Yeah, maybe for the disciples' benefit? Okay. Is there any possibility that the disciples maybe could use some understanding of progressive faith and progressive things? Because, yeah, they've seen 2 things back to back and they're still not getting it. Maybe this is Jesus saying, can you see the fact that I'm working toward a larger goal, but it doesn't happen all right now? It's progressive. I'm showing you, I'm trying to progress you. Just like this man, watch how I can heal him progressively. Watch how your faith can grow progressively. It's not a download. You don't just download it and you're done and you get it all.
Is it too far of a stretch to state an assumption, right?
Mm-hmm.
That when Jesus is talking to the disciples, he uses 2 statements. You have eyes, can't you see? In reference to what's about to happen. But he also says, you have ears, can't you hear? It's what has already happened.
Yeah. He's like, I mean, if you're the disciples and you go back over time, imagine that you're the disciples and you're getting the scriptures are all laid out now. The first, part of those letters are being shared, and you kind of go back and reading over different people's account because everybody has a different perspective, right? So maybe you're Peter and you're reading Luke's writings, or you're reading whoever's writings, and you're like, wow, that's talking about me. That was that thing that happened there. We have that benefit. Not all the disciples were able to read any of those writings. Some of them occurred long after they died. They didn't have the entire canonized Bible at that time. We have it now. They did not have it then. But some of the writings were going around, and so you would be able to see at least some of those. I think this is for the disciples, because he's constantly having to pound into their head, you unbelieving generation. This is the only time he shows progressive miracle. And I think it's done in an effort to let the disciples know it's not all happening in a download dump. It comes over time. Not everything is going to happen right now. Your faith is not going to be the 100% strongest the second you're a believer. It grows over time. Faith is a supernatural thing. Ephesians tells us faith is a gift from God. It's grown in you by asking for it. Okay, we got to keep rocking. Who was reading? Jeff, was that you? Yeah. 27. Go ahead.
Jesus went out along with his disciples to the villages of Philippi, and on the way he questioned his disciples, saying to them, "Who do people say that I am?" They told him, saying, "John the Baptist, and others say Elijah, but others one of the prophets." And he continued by questioning them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered and said to him, "You are the Christ." And he warned them to tell no one about him.
So again, he's been like, hey, we're going to slow the roll here. I don't want this to happen before I get everything done. Keep it under wraps for a little bit. We'll see more of that with healing, because the same thing with the healing, Jesus says on the blind man, don't go to your village on the way home. In other words, go right to your home. Don't go through the middle of town and be like, look, everybody, I can see again. We need to keep this quiet now. I have a plan. I have a progressive plan, and I need it to come to fruition. And to do that, I need you to be quiet about it for now. And so Jesus warns them not to tell anybody about him. Some translations say he ordered them, as in like an army captain or something. Like you're ordered. I'm not asking. It's not, hey, if you wouldn't mind. I am ordering you. By the way, when Jesus orders you to do something, make sure you do it. Pro tip. Okay, and keep going. Jesus predicts his death.
And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he was stating the matter plainly, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him.
I love that. Wait, which translation are you in?
NASB.
Oh, that's weird, because this NASB is not quite lining up with exactly.
Refresh.
Oh, that's why. You can just speak up and tell me that. Hey, dummy, push the click the button. 32. I love this. It's like awesome. Peter, you crazy critter. We need more Peters in the church. You know that? I mean, impulsive, and he's a little crazy like that, but he's got fire. He's got fire in him. 32, he says, Peter rebukes him. I love that. Peter, you have got some brass, brother. You're going to pull Christ aside and be like, I know you're the Christ and everything. I just said it out of my own mouth, but let me go ahead and correct you on a few things there, Jesus. I'm going to rebuke you about that. Like, Peter, you are bold. Bold. And what does Jesus say to Peter?
Get away from me, Satan.
Go ahead, Jeff. Finish off 33, I think it is, right?
Yeah. But turning around and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on God's interests, but man's."
Yeah, 2 seconds ago, he's like, who am I? And Peter gets it bullseyed. You're the Christ. He's like, yep. And by the way, let's keep that down. Then he's like, hey, Jesus, I don't think you should go and die like that. And Jesus is like, look, Satan, back. And whoa, so the point of that for us to take away is that you don't have to be demon-possessed for Satan to use you. You just let him get in there and just give you a little bit of off direction. Just a tiny little shift off this way. And pretty soon you're way off course. You don't have to be demon-possessed for Satan to utilize you, to utilize your fears, your insecurities, whatever's going on in your life. And he goes in there and he's like, oh, I'm going to use that. I got a little toehold right here. I'm going to get that. I'm going to get that going on. And that's what happened to Peter. He started to worry about that. Because remember, Messiah at this time, we have to have a proper view of Messiah. Messiah was seen as somebody who was going to come in and not just like lead the Jews out of oppression from the Romans. Messiah was seen as a master commander who would crush, decimate all of Rome, burn it to the ground. It wasn't just like some dude in a robe who's like, let me lead the way like a politician. Messiah was seen as somebody astoundingly powerful. People were going to cower in fear at what he was going to do, even though he was on their side, the Jews, the chosen one. Messiah was seen as astoundingly battle-hardened and weary, but ready to destroy anything that got in the way of God's people. This is the view of Messiah, not the suffering servant who's going to die on a cross. By the way, a cross at that time, we kind of sanitized the cross, right? Like you wear it on a necklace or you put it on the wall. We love the cross, Back then, the cross was like, it was shameful. If you had a relative who was, executed on the cross, you didn't talk about that. That was a shameful, shameful thing because the cross was done to display you and display how bad you were. You were that bad that you had to be displayed in this way for the entire town to see, better not do that. Because this is what we do to people like that. We put you up on a cross, hang you there until you die. This is a shameful thing. We sanitize the cross to a degree. And I think because of that, we lose some of the power of it. We have to remember how powerful Messiah was viewed to be. That's why Peter's like, no, Jesus, you're not going to die. No. Messiah comes in and destroys our opposition. Messiah comes in powerfully. You're not going to go on and die. No, Satan, get behind me. That's not my plan. You don't understand what power looks like. All right, keep going.
And he summoned the crowd and said to them, if anyone for whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of him when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels.
Anybody realize that taking up your cross daily is a one-way ticket? It's one way. One way to the cross. You'll come back from that. When you take up your cross daily, every day, the whole idea is it's a destination. You take up the cross one way. And at the end of the day, this is the idea that you have sort of died to self throughout the day. That's the whole idea. And then the next day we do it again. The cross is a destination. It's not like some kind of go around the circle journey. It's one way and it's a non-return trip. If you commit all the way, you're not coming back. And every day we suffer with it. And that's why we have to do it every single day. Like we struggle, right? Every single day we have to take up our cross. The one-way path to giving up our own will for that of God's. We have to do it every single day. Adulterous and sinful generation. People say that humanity hasn't changed that much. I'd argue they're true. A lot of the barbarianness that we would look at that age that exists today is just different. It's just not outright per se. I mean, you look at how people are treating each other in this day and age, especially online. Yeah, it's not physical necessarily like maybe it was then. But, I mean, people at that time, especially the devaluation of children they were considered property and dang near worthless until you were old enough to actually work and do something. It was just property, But Jesus says, come to me like a child. And they're like, well, a child has no value. A child, they can't even do anything. They have to be cared for. They don't provide any value. Until they're old enough to do something, they're just almost a nuisance. Now, of course, we have this overly, Now we have this overly child-centered culture where children are like deified into this, look how wonderful he is, he's so special. I'm like, he's setting a fire on somebody's porch. Like, he's not special. He's a little pyro just like the rest of us were. Yeah, expressing his emotions. Need to protect that. Yeah, you're like, no. And so it's which way is the shift gone?
Look at that fire. It was all him.
Yeah, I mean, which way is the shift gone, right? We're still off balance. We're still off kilter. We just gone different ways with it, right? Are we as physically brutal to one another as we were back at that time? Probably not. But are we as emotionally brutal to people? Probably. But we're not going to make that today, are we? Sorry, guys.
Next week.
Yeah. Well, we'll just keep going through it because there's too much to miss on this. Jeff, you've already got it. Please go on into 9. Boop. And let's keep rocking.
And Jesus was saying to them, truly I say to you, there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God after it has come with power.
Okay, what does that mean? Kingdom of God, power. What was that referring to? That's an easy one. Return of Jesus. Resurrection specifically, not the second coming. People here won't taste death until they see the kingdom of God come after his power. That's glorified after crucifixion and resurrection. Right? That's those people here, right there. Anybody want to guess who the 3 people are that are going to see that? Well, people on the earth that he's going to take with him. Remember the transfiguration? Remember that? What does the word trans mean? Anybody know what the word trans means? T-R-A-N-S? Trans means to shift, just like a transmission, right? It shifts. Transfiguration is Jesus' figure shifting, changes. Transfiguration, 3 people are going to see that. That's part of what he's talking about as well. Let's keep going. 6 days later.
6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John.
Oh, there they are. Peter, James, and John. Good job.
And brought them up on a high mountain by themselves.
Mountain retreat.
And he was transfigured before them, and his garments became radiant and exceedingly white, as no wanderer on earth can whiten them. Elijah appeared to them along with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus.
Stop there. Talking with Jesus. Wonder what they're talking about? I'd be curious. That'd be cool to know, man. Like, that's bananas. Like, Moses and Elijah are probably like, hey, is there anything new that's happened since we've been gone? What's the earth like? And Jesus is like, well, I invented this thing called a table. It's pretty cool. You know? Yeah. Hey, man, it's good to see you again. Like, that's probably not what they talked about. In fact, Luke 9:31 tells us what they talked about. They talked about, they spoke about his departure and what he's about to bring to fulfillment at Jerusalem. That's what they talked about. Oh, interesting. I always thought it was something like more like, hey, it's good to see you. I don't know. But no, straight up, we're talking about, yeah, what's going to happen in Jerusalem. He's like,
yeah, see, it's really awful being human.
Yeah, this is a mess. You guys are horrible. Yeah, you're terrible to one another too. And so I love this. So it's this massive thing. Jesus is basically what he's done is he's taken off the shroud of his humanness to expose his glory. And Peter, James, and John get to see it, and Elijah and Moses show up. Moses represents the law. Elijah represents the prophets. Moses died and was died with the Lord. And then Elijah was caught up. He didn't die. He was pulled up to the Lord. There's all kinds of really cool imagery in this. You can get the backdrop to it if you want. We're running low on time, so I got to kind of power through. And then, of course, Jesus in the whole thing represents the new covenant, right? So we have the old law, we have the prophets, that's Elijah, then we have Jesus' new covenant. There's all kinds of cool imagery here. Unfortunately, I had notes on, but we're going to have to get through it because we got to get into application. Okay, Elijah, Jesus, bam, Peter's on the scene. What does he say, Jeff?
Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 tabernacles, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah.
Big mistake, Peter. Right off the top. Big mistake. First of all, he's probably freaked out. He's probably like, hey, it's really cool that we're here, and I'm not freaked out at all by this. And we should make tabernacles like with those rocks way over there, not by you guys. We should go do that. And we'll make 3 of them. You guys are all cool. What's the mistake in that? What was that? Bullseye. He diminishes Jesus, that of mortal men, Moses and Elijah. Oops. I wonder if God will just let that fly, and maybe he won't say anything. Let's see what happens.
For he did not know what to answer, for they became terrified.
Terrified.
Then a cloud formed, overshadowing them, and a voice came out of the cloud. This is my beloved son, listen to him. All at once they looked around and saw no one with them anymore except Jesus alone.
So God actually kind of basically corrects Peter there real quick. Peter's like, hey, we should build you guys 3 tabernacles. And so immediately clouds show up and a thundering voice from God with an exclamation point, or explanation point if you're my wife. And what does God say? This is my beloved son. It's not Moses. It's not Elijah. And what does it say, exclamation point? Listen to him. And then to keep Peter from dying of fear, immediately they're gone. It's just the 3 of them again. Peter, I love the impetuousness. I can't put Jesus on the same rank as Moses or that speaker that you like really well, whoever it is. He is his own person, or his own person in being Jesus, and he is creator of the universe, son of the Father. Listen to him. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell at everybody. Just, understand the gravity of what's going on. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't just fall over dead at the overwhelmingness of it, By the living God, the Father. I hope I never get corrected by God the Father. I'm going to not build tabernacles. Okay, keep going. Boom. And they come down from the mountain.
As they were coming down from the mountain, he gave orders not to relate to any.
What does he say? Hey, would you please not? I am ordering you like a commander of an army. Don't. Listen when he does that. Keep going.
Until the Son of Man rose from the dead. They seized upon that statement, discussing with one another what rising from the dead meant. They asked him, saying, "Why is it that the scribes say that Elijah must come first?" And he said to them, "Elijah does first come and restore all things."
Hold there for a second. Elijah does first come and restore all things. Okay, so there's a prophecy in Malachi. It talks about this, and it basically says Elijah will come before Messiah. Yet here we are, and Messiah is here. And if Elijah's supposed to come first, well, I mean, he just showed up on the mountain for a minute, but like he didn't do anything. Like, I guess they just talked. That was cool. But what is this about? What is this talking about? Elijah has to come first. And why is it that whenever people ask who Jesus is, or Jesus asks them who he is, they always say, oh, well, people think you're John the Baptist raised from the dead, or maybe Elijah. Why Elijah? Why do you think he's Elijah? We talked about it last week. You remember? I didn't touch on it very long. It was very quick. The prophecy says Elijah has to come before Messiah. Before Messiah is coming. Okay, well, where is he?
He's not doing everything that Messiah is supposed to do to the letter.
In part. The bigger issue is that people aren't reading it right. Elijah does come before Messiah, before his second coming, not his first coming. You have to go back and read the context of Malachi, which they're talking about. Revelation goes back and picks up on that. It's the second coming of Christ when Elijah is to come. Now, some scholars say, well, John the Baptist was basically an Elijah image bearer. And while that's true, it's not Elijah reincarnated. John the Baptist is John the Baptist. Jesus calls him John the Baptist. He doesn't call him Elijah. He calls him that. Okay. So Elijah has to come first and restore all things. That's right. Because in Revelation, we talk about Jesus had two witnesses that are going to come down and be witnesses within the Revelation time. That's Elijah and Moses. That's who that is. That's who he's referring to when Elijah comes. Second coming, not first coming. So right off the hop, scribes, Pharisees, all getting it wrong. We're reading into it wrong because Jesus is claiming messiahship. They're so caught up in the fact that he doesn't look like Messiah, they're forgetting the fact he's going to come 2 times. Keep going.
And yet, how is it written, the Son of Man will suffer many things and be treated with contempt? But I say to you that Elijah has indeed come, and they did it to him, but it was written of him.
Back it says, yeah, Elijah, he was on the earth. John the Baptist to him, Elijah, and neither am I. So he goes back. Just to make sure it was clear to him, right? Okay, keep going. We got to get through this. This is my favorite part.
When they came back to the disciples, they saw a large crowd around them, and some scribes arguing with them. Immediately, when the entire crowd saw him, they were amazed and began running up to greet him. And he asked them, "What are you discussing with them?" And one of the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought you my son, possessed with a spirit which makes him mute. And whenever it seizes him, it slams him to the ground, and he foams at the mouth, and grinds his teeth and stiffens up. I told your disciples to cast it out, and they could not do it." And he answered them and said, "O unbelieving generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring him to me."
Bring him to me, exclamation point. You goofballs. I hate the Pharisees in this because they're arguing, but they take no action to help. Well, if you're going to argue that disciples are so far off the mark and doing the wrong thing, why don't you step in and help? You can hate but not help? Yeah, that's helpful. That's really helpful. Keep your hate to yourself then. That's where I get a little bent and caught up in it all. If you're just going to be there to complain, bring some solution with it. Even if it's crazy, come up with something. Have some investment in it. And the scribes don't. They just argue. And then it's, well, sorry, we're not going to do anything. You guys do. You're so smart. Keep going.
They brought the boy to him. When he saw him, immediately the spirit threw him into a convulsion, and falling to the ground, he began rolling around and foaming at the mouth. And he asked his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. It has often thrown him both into the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." And Jesus said to him, "If you can."
If you can.
All things are possible to him who believes. Immediately, the boy's father cried out and said, "I do believe. Help my unbelief."
Stop right there. Favorite line in all the book of Mark. I do believe, but help my unbelief. Later on, the disciples asked Jesus, why couldn't we cast this demon out? And he says, oh, this one can only be cast out by prayer and fasting. To be clear, prayer and fasting is not some magical thing that you do that gives you special powers. Prayer and fasting brings you closer to God. The closer you are to God, the more he can work through you. Careful to think about prayer and fasting on that too when it comes to that. Real quick, I know we're just out of time, but I got to touch on this. Lord's Prayer. Remember the Lord's Prayer? Lord's my shepherd, I shall not walk. That's not the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
The Lord's Prayer, yeah, I was seeing if anybody get it. The Lord's Prayer is, how's it start now? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Revered is thy name. Kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Be happy with what you have. Plan for the future. Do more stuff. Fine. Daily bread, what you have now. Be happy with that. Give us our bread, our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive those who are in debt to us, right? Forgive other people because you're forgiven, right? Lead us not into temptation. That one's easy. But deliver us from evil. That one's where it catches it. Deliver us from evil, which means that you will have a point in your life more than likely where evil will be in, on, and around you, and you will need to be delivered from it. We ought to pay pretty darn close attention when the creator of the universe tells us how to pray. Anybody pray the Lord's Prayer here very often? I don't. I started this week, like almost lead it off that way, and then I get into like, supplication and praise and all that. When the creator of the universe tells us how to pray to him, probably ought to be paying pretty close attention to that. Like, hey, you want to see things done? Prayer and fasting. Get close to me. Oh, I'm just not seeing God move in my life. Well, how much time are you investing in him? Because I guarantee you, he'll invest the same amount into you. Okay, we're out of time. I'm so sorry. Just so much I wanted to get through on this, but we don't have time, so we're going to not worry about it. Pick up on this next. Okay, I'm going to end on the Lord's Prayer. And I'm going to pray it if you guys are okay with that. If you're not, I'm going to do it anyway. Our Father, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is. Lord, lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power. Amen. Everybody think on that a little bit this week, I would ask. Pray that prayer a little bit. If you have attack coming on in your life, you got relationship troubles, you got problems at work, you got problems in your family, you may need to be praying for being delivered from evil. Think about that. Jesus tells us that's how to pray. He doesn't say maybe you should think about this. That's do it. Okay. And thanks everybody for coming. Sorry I kept you late. I was a little spicy this morning. Yeah, kind of, right?